nuestra codera, ciascuarda è il lobo di nuestra codera. Rido, rido, cido, la guarda ripera, ciascuarda è il lobo di nuestra codera, ciascuarda è il lobo di nuestra codera. Para Dios, sola y somodes, más poderoso lo supo de entender. Cristo hace que no quise pecar, ni original está bien no tuviera. Río, río, Shiro, la guarda rivera, nos guarda el lobo de nuestra cordera, nos guarda el lobo de nuestra cordera. Que es nacido es el gran monarca, Cristo patriarca, desde el vestido, a Dios redimido, con cejas exhibido, frágil y finito se quisiera. Río, río, Shiro, la guarda rivera, nos guarda el lobo de nuestra cordera, nos guarda el lobo de nuestra cordera. Muchas profecías han profetizado, ahora en nuestros días lo hemos alcanzado. A Dios amado, vemos en el suelo, y al hombre en el cielo, porque le quisiera. Río, río, Shiro, la guarda rivera, nos guarda el lobo de nuestra cordera, nos guarda el lobo de nuestra cordera. Río, río, Shiro, la guarda rivera, nos guarda el lobo de nuestra cordera, nos guarda el lobo de nuestra cordera.
Our next song will be So Now Has Come Our Joyful Feast.
So now is come a joyful feast, that everyone be jolly. Each room with ivy leaves is dressed, and every post with holly.
From some rosette and earthly pine, round your forehead garlands twine.
From sorrow in this cup so fine,
And let us all be merry.
now all our neighbors' chimney smoke and Christmas larks are burning. Their ovens they routine such choked and others spits are turning. Without the door that sorrow lie, and if a cold it have to die.
We'll bury it in a Christmas fire, and evermore be merry. Now every lad is wondrous trim, and no man minds his labor. Our lasses have provided them a bagpipe and a tabor. Young men and maids and girls and boys give life to one another's joy. And you alone shall hide them eyes, perceive that they are merry. How the works abroad and call each other forth to merriment. Anon you'll see the field, the hall, the rocks and rocks, the splash, and how the beast will rouse the sound. And all the sailors house are found, and there they will be merry, and there they will be merry. And wherefore in these merry days should we, I pray thee, joy? Now let us sing some roundelays to make our mirth the fuller. And whilst we thus inspire, sing, let all the streets with echoes ring. Woods and hills and everything, bear witness we are merry. Bear witness we are merry.
Our next song will be Gaudete Omnes.
Gaudete omnes, gaudete omnes, gaudete omnes,
Our next song will be Boom Boom Boom.
On December 5 and 20, boom, boom, boom. On December 5 and 20, boom, boom, boom. He is born of God's real love, the Son of God, the Son of God. He is born of Virgin Mary in this night so cold and dreary, boom, boom, boom. Birds live in every forest, boom, 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 boom.
Birds live in every forest, boom, boom, boom.
You sing of virgins, sing of virgins now. But you make a darling nest, so the newborn baby rests. Boom, 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 boom. All the little stars in heaven, boom, boom, boom. All the little stars in heaven, boom, 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 boom. Looking down, see Jesus cry, see him cry, see him cry. Send away the darkness, lightly shine your lights upon us brightly. Boom, 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 boom.
Thank you very much for having us sing here tonight. And we so appreciate all of your support. We've seen so many of you at performances at the Rally dinners and Rally communities. So we really appreciate all of your support. If you want to hear more, they have one more dinner performance at DeKalb High School Friday night. We just finished 2 performances at NIU this past week. So being great and studying this week and doing not so they wanted to do. So anyway, thanks again for having us. We have one more song for you. Can you play it?
Bambari, 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 bambari,
What the heck is going on?
All right.
Somebody dropped a KEC pin.
Okay, thank you again. Next, we have approval of gifts and donations, and this is an action item that the Board of Education accepts with gratitude the charitable gift from State Farm Mutual Automobile Insurance Company in the amount of $4,000 to be used for a field trip for all DeKalb 428 fifth grade students to NIU STEM scheduled for March 2020. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Jeff Albrecht,
Yes.
Samantha McDavid,
Yes.
Sarah Moses,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Jeremy Olson,
Yes.
David Seymour.
Yes.
Is there somebody here for that? Is there somebody who's attached to this gift? Well, I want to say for the record that this is very generous and it's a wonderful gift. Thank you very much.
Next, we have public comment. Members of the public who wish to speak to the board should complete a request card prior to the meeting. This section of the meeting will be reserved for comments from the public. All comments should be limited to 3 minutes. Criticism of individuals is not in order. Thank you. We have one comment tonight by Dwayne Brown. Out of district students is the subject.
Thank you.
Good evening, board members and community members. The J. Doe lawsuit and the vetting process that ensued after was one of the reasons this new policy is necessary. In front of you, the board members, is the oath of office each of you took when you were sworn in as District 428 board members. The part that stands out most to me, and the part I think at least 4 of you on the board forget, is the part that reads, "I shall respect taxpayer interests by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets." It means district monies. Instead of respecting taxpayer interests, you are inviting and quantifying people to come into our schools without an impartial vetting process, of which most surrounding school districts do every year, if not all. This is a massive cover-up, and you are allowing students into our schools without proper qualifications. Your actions last month to include a new policy in our district confuses people. It gives the impression that it is okay to be a student in our school district without proper qualifications. Whether you are an illegal alien or an American citizen, you still must supply the appropriate paperwork showing that you live in district with a parent or legal guardian. No one should be offended by that. You are protecting the non-compliant students. These students cost the taxpayers up to $10,000 for each student you choose not to vet. DeKalb County is the 40th most expensive county out of 3,150 counties in the United States for real estate taxes because of student tax load we have here in District 428. J. Doe was never looking for undocumented families. J. Doe was looking out for district students without guarantors as state law ILC 105 mandates. There are 2 types of illegal students. The first group of students are those whose families have immigration issues that are allowed to be in our schools by federal law, passed in 1982 by the U.S. Supreme Court. These students make up a very small percent in District 428. The second group of students are those who do not live with a parent or court-appointed guardian in the district or live out of the district. The students that do not live in district with a parent or court-appointed guardian are the students the vetting investigation was trying to exclude out of District 428, not illegal aliens. I, Dwayne Brown, request that the school board follow the law and vet the schools grades K through 12 with an outside firm to correct these injustices that are destroying living conditions socially and economically in DeKalb. It is imperative that all school board members protect the DeKalb community from the mistakes of the past. Sincerely, Dwayne Brown.
Thank you for your public comment. Next, we move on to non-business consent agenda. This is an action item that the Board of Education approve the non-business consent agenda items A through H.
We actually have board committee reports.
Oh, I always skip that. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Melissa. Board committee reports and correspondence.
Do you want to report on that?
Go ahead, Karen.
I was like, I always want to do it.
I know we're gonna have a bond restructuring discussion.
It's coming up, all right?
Yes.
We can talk about it, so. Well, I'm sorry, Phyllis. Yeah, we talked a lot about the bond restructuring. And obviously that's coming up, I guess, right, here in a little bit.
Is that all you wanted to say? I didn't want to cut you off. You said-
Well, I just don't want to do that.
Okay,
That was the whole thing.
all right. Any other correspondence? Okay. Then we'll now move on to our non-business consent agenda. And this is an action item that the Board of Education approve the non-business consent agenda items A through H. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Roll call?
Sarah Moses. Yes. Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Jeremy Olson.
Yes.
David Seymour.
Yes.
Jeff Albert.
Yes.
Samantha McDavid.
Yes. Next, we have our business consent agenda. This is an action item that the Board of Education approve the business consent agenda items A through D. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Victoria Newport. Yes. Jeremy Olson.
Yes.
David Seymour.
Yes.
Jeff Albert.
Yes.
Samantha McDavid.
Yes.
Sarah Moses. Yes.
And next, we'll have our presentation, subject A, threat assessment team and protocols. And this is being presented by Ms. Christy Meyer, Dr. Lisa Becker, Ms. Donna Larson, Ms. Tammy Carson, and Mr. Ben Vale. This is an informational thing.
Good evening. Wanted to share with you this evening what we as a part of our district threat assessment team have determined our protocol to move forward with some recent legislation that brings us to School Code 4190 about targeted school violence and how we need to put together not only a team at the district level, but we'll also put together teams at the building level and a protocol when there is a suspected threat. Go ahead, Amir, please. So per the school code, we need to develop a team, and we need to develop our protocols. The protocols need to be presented to you as a board, so you are aware that we have a set protocol in place. Well, thank you. As you see here, these are per the school code, we need to have various perspectives coming to the table to develop this protocol to work as a team at the district level. And those are the different perspectives and roles that each member should serve. As you see, for example, Aaron Lockhart, our SRO, he serves on this district threat assessment team because he comes to the table with a perspective that perhaps myself at the district level or Donna Larson, who's at the building level, we have come to the table with different roles and responsibilities, as well as our school psych, school social worker, and a teacher. Now, this is our current district committee that we have, and we will be looking to build our building levels and our district teams parallel to some of our current teams that we have in place, because these teams will need to meet on a monthly basis to review our protocols. I asked Donna to come tonight just to give a perspective on what are we talking about when we're talking about a threat assessment. How is this different, Donna, than a risk assessment, a student harm assessment, or a tornado drill?
Well, as everyone is pretty much aware of how many things that go on in our buildings a day, just really analyzing and having a team come together. And fortunately, I work, with a group of team members, but even at the elementary level, of just making sure that you have your team set in place when you have those moments, and just really being able to analyze and working even with our SRO of the police perspective, the school perspective, and just hitting the ground running when that comes across your desk. So like I said, I'm very fortunate to have a team in my building, but for elementary folk, it's good to have those plans in place before it even comes across your desk.
So we'll have a consistent plan throughout the district as to how to respond when we get information brought to us that there is a potential threat of harm to students. And that protocol then will work through to see if it is a valid threat, and then that protocol helps us to respond to that threat. And I want to emphasize, it's hopefully preventative. These are preventative measures to stop the threat before any action takes place. Okay? So, thank you, sir. The next. Thank you. So our proposed, we have to vet and determine which plan are we going to use, which protocols. Our team has done that. We looked at a few different models, but absolutely the Virginia model plan was one that was really recommended by most of both ISBE. I went to a workshop by the FBI and they recommended this, that we utilize this because it has been vetted. It has very thorough training associated with it, and it really does help a team work through step by step, making sure we're putting supports in place for both all the folks that are all the students that are being investigated, and supports for the staff as they work through the process. So where we're at right now is this is our model plan that we're planning to move forward with. And right now we are arranging for training for both our district staff and our district team, and our clinicians and building teams come before fall, so that we can put this in place formally. I want to remind everybody, though, we do have protocols that our teams need to respond, but this makes it formal, and it also makes it consistent throughout the district.
Questions?
I have one. I don't see anything outlining this on the Virginia model plan as far as what it is. I mean, I think we have that somewhere, but so in a couple of words, or in a short description, what have you been doing? Well, I'm going to ask you what you've been doing. You have initiated protocols prior to this Virginia plan. What will change after you use this Virginia plan? What are, in a brief description, what is going to change by you using this plan that you like? In other words, what are you going to be doing differently because of this plan that you haven't been doing previously?
It's a great question, Jeff. The protocols, or the procedures that we have been using, have been informal. They are based on the events that are brought to the team, the leadership team at each building, and they are responding on that individual level, okay? So they have been informal, but fortunately, to this point, effective. This makes it a system of support. It makes our protocol consistent through the district. It keeps all stakeholders knowledgeable. So this is very similar to our tornado drills or our intruder drills. Everybody knows what to do. We go to a common place to find the protocol and we follow it. And so district-wide, we will be responding in a similar manner. Of course, taking each individual incident and responding to that incident, but in a similar structure. Would you agree? Because you certainly at the high school, you might go through this process a little more often, unfortunately, than our elementary.
Right. We have some things, we have everything in place for certain threats, but this will give us a little bit, just more background information on how to handle certain situations. We talk at the safety task committee, and we met once a month to adjust protocols based off of experiences that we've had. Things are super different each time that they come across our buildings. This will be, like Christy had stated, just a more formalized plan that is happening across.
It's almost a quote that was recently shared with me that safety protocols are always too much until they're not enough. And this is another example of a training which, again, has been proposed to us and supported by, even the FBI say this is a great protocol for you to follow as a district. One thing that it can also do, Jeff, is bring, again, we've been doing it in, I'll say, silos and in teams in each building, and right now our teams have been effective. But with these protocols, when I learn what my specific role is and the building principal, it could almost be that the building principal from another building could go and sit in that role in a building that's not theirs. But because we have these specific protocols in place, they know what the principal's roles are. Or a school psychologist from another building has to go fill in for somebody else. They know what the school psychologist's roles are. It's no longer building dependent.
Well, I just want to make a comment that I think it's very, first and foremost, I think the documenting process is critical, because it's not just consistency in how we're handling it from the perspective of who's here today, but who's going to be here tomorrow, because there is such a thing as turnover, and having a well-documented process is critical. So
Well said.
well done, and frankly, I hope that I'm sure we are evaluating all of our processes, that perhaps this got driven at us because there was a state mandate. What else hasn't been state mandated that maybe we could be nailed down a little bit better? So just food for thought is my only comment. I don't really have a question.
What I can share to that, Jeremy, is after every time that we have any type of incident that we respond to, whether it be a bus fender bender, which we recently had one. When we get done, we always debrief and go back through, what Tammy's role was, what my role was, what Cindy's role was, and did we miss any steps? And is there something that should be included in our internal protocols that potentially be missed? So that occurs after every incident that we have.
That's excellent.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment that I want to compliment Jamie, you and Christy and the staff for getting ahead of this. And as I understand it, there are certain kind of mandates from the state and from others as far as what we should follow. But as far as it's been described to me, that we're ahead of this curve and that we are exceeding mandate, and we are trying to get ahead of a lot of issues that could come back and bite us. So I compliments to you all for putting this together and seeing this as a problem and moving forward ahead of the problem to try to stop these things before they happen, rather than just cover your derriere.
Thank you. Thank you, Christy and Donna.
Or were there any other comments? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right. We will. We will move to subject B, bond refunding plan and parameters resolution. Ms. Cynthia Carpenter, Mr. Jerry
That's it.
Dudzik, and Ms. Elizabeth Hennessy and Brandon James. This is an informational item.
So we have Jerry Dudzik here from Ellers, and he's our municipal financial advisor. He was at our FFAC meeting, which was last week, as well as Liz was there. She couldn't be here tonight, so he's gonna stand in for her and go through the presentation that we went through with FFAC. We're at the back end of our bond restructuring process. We started this process basically back in 2016. And we've had various refundings since then, and now we're at the very back end where we've got our 2010 bond we issued for the referendum to build the high school in Portland Elementary and some other things that we did. And those bonds are callable or very soon, and this is an opportunity to restructure those and save some dollars, and also fold in the property tax relief grant dollars that I spoke about at the last meeting. So Jerry here's going to give us an update on that and what that looks like. So here you go.
Frankly, great.
Yes.
I'm going to be referring to this document. You should have a hard copy on your table. So. Let's see, we're going to first start with page 4. We wanted to first take a look at the market before getting on the refunding plan itself. We have a couple of graphics here and then actually a matrix that's set up on rates. But this first graph on page 4 actually shows an index. It's called a municipal market data index. This is for a 5-year period, and it just gives you a nice picture of AAA bonds, where they're rated, and really where the rates have been over the last 5 years. You'll see on the right side there, they're broken out by color in terms of the term itself. All those are AAA rated bonds. You'll see 1 year all the way up through 30 year. And then the blue line there is 10-year treasury, which is typically for like a revenue bond or a taxable bond. We're talking in this refunding plan for a tax exempt bond, but this is just to show how the trend of all of these somewhat follow. The next graphic looks at 3 years, again, taking a look at the MMD index, and again, these are AAA tax exempt bonds, but we do have a blue line on here listed for the 10-year treasuries. So if you focus on the red, the 10-year, that's more in line of what you're going to see for tax exempt bonds out there. Again, for a higher rated, we're rated AA2 here in your district, which is great, by the way. But this for the index, it just gives you a good look at where the rates have been. I think between this picture as well as the first graphic, what you can see is, while it looks volatile in the short term, we're still at 50-year historical lows in terms of the interest rates, and that's why this refunding plan has really been an opportunity for school districts and government agencies to take a look at potential refinancings. This next slide basically breaks out, if you looked at the red line on the prior slide, if you look at the 10-year term here, we identify really different periods throughout the last 3 years, primarily where the Fed rate, maybe with the Federal Reserve maybe increased rates. They have their meeting, their quarterly meeting. You'll see how the those potential changes on the 10-year, which are highlighted there on 10-year terms for a bond, change either up or down. And we actually identified, I believe the currents identified the October meeting, as well as either the March or April election too. So you can see that on the prior slide. But again, this is just showing the trend along with some specific dates. I'm going to talk a little bit about the financing plan itself, really the more important stuff here. But I thought the market, those quick was a great way to get into talking through the opportunity here for us. This pre-funding debt structure on slide number 8 shows really the debt structure before the 2016 refunding plan was looked at. You can see there's a pretty dramatic swing up in terms of all the way through to 2021, 2025, some pretty high levels of debt service payments, and then it drops off, terms out at 2028 on there. And again, this is prior to the refunding plan, which you've already started. But thought this would be a good picture to first look at before the plan gets in place, and we show some of the results of what we had with the plan already. And that's what slide 9 really hits on here. You'll see the bullets. I'm going to talk through each one briefly. The first one in 2016, really the district made a goal to smooth out and minimize the tax impact for the taxpayers here in the school district. And really the whole goal around the plans on these refundings was focused back on that back in 2016. The second bullet identified you had some bonds that were refinanced at that point. You had a $1 million savings back to the taxpayers. In 2017, 2018, you had some Series 2008 bonds that were outstanding. Those were both refinanced and then restructured 5 years out to 2035. Again, with the goal of leveling out and minimizing the impact. In 2019, just recently, you had the May issue. Now, the 2009 series were actually Build America bonds. There's a 35% subsidy that the federal government paid at the time to do those financings. A lot of districts did them. It was a good opportunity. However, Build America bonds were also taxable, even though you get that 35% subsidy. However, with where the rates were for tax-exempt bond rates, which are lower than taxable rates, you were able to benefit this last round and refinance, and also had a cash contribution towards that to find a savings through that refunding of $1.5 million. So that was very fresh, just this past springtime of this calendar year. And then the final step here, that last bullet, is really getting into this 2010 series that Cindy referenced. It's really the final step of the April 2020 refinancing that we're looking at. There's going to be a $10 million contribution of district funds estimated, and we're estimating a present value savings of $5.9 million. And that 5.9, if you look to reconcile that, that goes back to the October 22nd information. Going on to slide 10, this really breaks down the current debt restructuring plan. This is before the property tax relief grant. But if we take a look at this, it's a lot of numbers, obviously, but I'm going to focus on a few important spots. You'll see in the middle, we identified the final tax exempt issue for that refunding we did this calendar year. To see the new numbers there, the refunded debt service is in the column that says less refunded 2009 debt service. You'll see the negative numbers there. And then the corresponding new issue of that $25.53 million, refunding those with the savings identified down below at the bottom. And then just to the right of that, you'll see two columns that identify the new 2020 refunding that we're taking a look at. Again, a tax exempt issue. You'll see the abatements on the left side that are highlighted, the $1.75 million and the $2.25 million. And then if you look all the way to the right, I'd like to focus on that column. That breaks out really what the new impact is for someone that owns a $150,000 home.
Which column are you referring to?
The far right column?
You have the pointer? No.
That's green at the top.
That's right.
Yeah, the far right. You'll see. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Top two are highlighted there. You'll see a 224 and a 174. If you look at that whole column there, the average reduction goes down to $396 for someone that owns a $150,000 home, down to $600 with the current debt the way it is right now. So pretty significant savings. Down below also you'll see we'll have the savings identified numbers for both the one that was done this calendar year and the estimated 2020. Wanted to point out the net present value savings, which are really important. That's listed at $5.3 million. And the present value savings percentage, which is often something that's focused on by someone like myself as a municipal advisor, we'll see it down as low as 3%. So this is a very healthy savings that you're seeing through this refunding based on where rates are right now. And you'll see the total contribution as that final row on the bottom there, where it says district contribution, $3 million that was already done, and the $10 million that I referenced before. I wanted to mention within the structure that we're looking at right now in the market, I should say Liz put in, which is very healthy, 50 basis points cushion. So if the rates fluctuate a little bit, we have some wiggle room based on the estimates. We took a conservative approach with that. I think that's something important to point out. You go to the next slide. This just shows the new structure, how it reduced quite dramatically the impact of the local taxpayer, extended it a little bit, but really reduced it. And obviously you get those savings, those dollar for dollar savings with the refundings that go really savings for the debt service and for the taxpayer. If I jump to the next slide, I really want to have some focus on this today, and Cindy actually referenced it earlier a little bit. It's a property tax relief grant. Last year, while the district did not qualify for it, you're ranked number 34th. You're more than likely going to qualify. All indications are you will. And if you're not familiar with the tax relief grant, it provides districts with a higher tax rate relative to everybody else in the state to get a portion of state funds to abate or reduce your taxes. And every year per statute, the state has to set aside $50 million for this, for the property tax relief grant. So one of the requirements I should mention is there is a 2-year abatement to receive the grant. So that's something that internally, obviously, you got to work through in terms of reporting. And also there's just a filing step too, which I know in FFAC we talked a little bit about that, and that's pretty simple. But you'll see the initial maximum tax abatement possible. It's $5,037,155. And then also to the right of that that's tied to the evidence-based funding, which I'll talk a little bit about later on a later slide. That breakdown and what that impact is in a positive way for the district going through this process. These next 3 bullets highlight the property tax relief grant. And the first bullet there, it says district again already committed $2.25 million in debt service to reduce really your debt and the interest costs associated with that. And the fact that the maximum abatement is at $5,037,000. If you take a look at really, where we're at with those 2 pieces, the district can actually do some additional reductions here to pay off the bonds sooner and save some interest again for the district and the taxpayer. So you can see we break down that other balance is $2.787 million. And the total abatement then equates with that 2.7872250 to that $5,037,155. And again, that's the 2-year abatement requirement for 19 and 20. Again, reducing your debt service and total interest cost for that. And the last bullet gets back to that evidence-based funding that I referenced before. That's part of your formula, and this puts you in a more advantageous role where it builds that goes back into your base as you work through that formula, and it creates really more flexibility or options for the district in terms of future funding. Slide 14 basically breaks down pulling in the property tax relief grant. And you'll see now columns listed here, but you'll see proposed abatements right towards the middle there. You'll see the $2.25 million, the top 2 years for 19 and 20, and then the $2.787 million that's tied to the property tax relief grant. So those are now placed into this graphic. And then if we look again to the far right side where we were before, on the average before we were at $396 for somebody that owned a $150,000 home. This drops at $30 additional dollars down to $366. And again, a benefit to the taxpayer. This also includes that built-in 50 basis points for rate changes potentially. But the net present value on this one exceeds 10%, which again is even better than the last graphic that we had similar to this. So again, it was created through those additional dollars the district put to it, and most importantly, I think that property tax relief grant that you get from the state. Any questions up till now? One other thing I wanted to get into. Good. The next page just shows the new structure again, going out to 2035, but lowering it below that 8 million mark. So again, it's more favorable than it was on that prior slide, but a similar structure in the way that it looks. And then a final piece, we learned late yesterday that there's an opportunity possibly to use a conduit issuer in this case, and the conduit issuer is the Illinois Finance Authority. It's often referred to as the IFA. They often will issue on behalf of school districts, local governments is an option to issue their debt. And one of the benefits going through the IFA that we're taking a look at, this is we're in the research phase, but we're also going to work with the attorney to prep ourselves in the event that this really looks like a good opportunity to utilize them, is the big benefit is you get a double tax benefit, not only the federal tax exemption that you get with a tax exempt bond, but you also get your state tax exemption. And right now, as a lot of you probably know, in November, there's going to be a referendum on graduated tax rates here in Illinois. Decision's not made. It has to be, I believe it's 3/5 of the voting public in the state have to support it for it to move through. But a lot of people that are impacted by that new graduated tax rule, if it does take effect, will find something like this very attractive through the Illinois Finance Authority. Buying bonds for a school district like yourself at a highly rated AA2. So we're taking a look at that right now because of that savings. When we ran some initial numbers, I should say Liz did, her team, they saw a net present value after extra costs because you do pay some costs on the front end to use the Illinois Finance Authority. But there was $200,000 net present value benefit and a $377,000 dollar for dollar future value savings on this as well that would be added on to what we talked about tonight. So we're in the phases of looking at that. I should mention Downers Grove and Lake Zurich school districts have done this already. There was one I also looked online farther east of the city, one of the township high school districts. So school districts are utilizing it. It seems to be really a size thing. You know, is it large enough and beneficial? And again, I think coming up with this referendum vote for the state, some investors are finding this as being a good opportunity to take a look at the IFA as a conduit issuer on behalf of the school district. So again, that's in the research phases yet, but I wanted to bring that option out as we just learned about this yesterday, talking through it, and we had a meeting today as well on it. So I guess I'd answer any questions.
Jerry, early in the presentation, you kind of blushed over that the district is making an additional contribution of $10 million. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I believe that goes back to part of it was the construction grant that the district got from the state.
Yes, back in 2011, actually 2011 and 2012, we received about $22 million from the state when we were building the high school. And through the FFAC committee, we had used some of those funds to do some renovations, to renovate Tyler, to do some security entrances, but then they also decided to take $10 million and put it in our working cash fund. And to have that to help our fund balance, which was very beneficial to when the economy was going bad to some extent and our EAD were down, we were able to keep in our fund balance just as a fallback. And now we're at the point where our fund balance is shape, so we're putting that $10 million on this bond issue. The timing of this works out well because you can really only reduce that principal when these bonds are callable, and then actually make an impact in the long term in terms of interest savings. So that's where that $10 million is coming from.
So in essence, the board's making the decision to take $10 million and put that back towards this debt.
Yes, and making it a savings for the taxpayer in the short and long term.
That was already approved by the board.
That was the resolution the board passed back in, I believe it was April, when we were doing the 2019 bond issue, because that's when we used the $3 million that we received from the city, the expiration of TIP 2. So that's the $3 million that we used for 2019, and then at that same time, there was a resolution passed by the board to use the $10 million.
Right. So that's already been approved and
Yes.
aside.
Now we're there. We're now at that process where these 2010 bonds are callable. We'll basically do the same thing with the 10 million.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, bear with me here. In a summary of the benefit of that, moving the 10 million from where it was to where it now is.
It's basically it's like your mortgage. You know, if you had additional dollars and you wanted to pay down on principal, so basically you're paying down your principal and you're paying less interest in the long run. And on top of that, even though we're stretching the debt out a little bit, we're taking advantage of the lower interest rates as well, because that makes sense. But taking that 10 million, paying down principal, I mean, basically means it's just 10 million less that the taxpayer will have to pay.
I was there when we made that decision, so I kind of know that, but I just was having you summarize. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Okay, so at the January meeting, when we'll bring formally back the parameters resolution, that will probably include that the IFA option, the Illinois Finance Authority option, is just another piece of that parameters that gives that opportunity to use that conduit issuer to issue those bonds and get that state tax. So that'll come back to the January 21st.
And I'm sorry again. It sounded, from what Mr. Dudzik said, is that we are moving closer to that grant. It sounds like we're moving in a positive manner towards that grant, correct?
Yeah.
Thank you.
That'll be.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Yes. Okay, on to our old business action items. Subject A, property tax relief grant, Ms. Cynthia Carpenter. This is an action item that the Board of Education approve applying for the full amount available to the district under the property tax relief grant program for FY20. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call?
Jeremy Olson,
Yes.
David Seymour,
Yes.
Jeff Albrecht,
Yes.
Samantha McDavid,
Yes.
Sarah Moses,
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Subject B, request to bid Jefferson parking lot expansion. This was presented by Ms. Tammy Carson. This is an action item that the Board of Education approve administration to go out to bid for the Jefferson parking lot expansion. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
David Seymour,
Yes.
Jeff Albrecht,
Absolutely, yes.
Samantha McDavid,
Yes.
Sarah Moses,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Jeremy Olson.
And subject C, intergovernmental agreement for the Project Hammer development. Mr. Jamie Craven presented this, and this is an action item that the Board of Education approved the intergovernmental agreement for the Project Hammer development. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call?
Jeff Albrecht,
Enthusiastic, yes.
Samantha McDavid,
Yes.
Sarah Moses,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Jeremy Olson,
Yes.
David Seymour.
Yes.
New,
Comment? Can we say something
you need
attached
to
to
make
this?
a comment?
Yes, I want to thank Bill Nicholas and the team for this. I appreciate it very much, the efforts that you put into making this happen. It's our contribution is a small part of a very large picture. Thank you so much. He's here to thank him for coming.
Does anyone else want to make a comment?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Next, we have new business and administration. Subject A, approval of school improvement plans for designated RC 18, report card 18 schools. Mr. Tim Vincent, and this is a information item and an action item. I'll read the action when you're done.
Thanks.
Yes.
So this is coming forward information as well as action to provide the schools as much time as they can to submit and discuss their school improvement plans. I came to you in October to kind of discuss the new process because of the ESSA law. I wanted to say thank you as well publicly to the principals and their teams who came up with the plans that I had shared with you last Tuesday and that you have in front of you as well. What you'll see is there's three major goals to everybody's plan based on where each school is respective to their data. The first two are based on IAR data, which is the standard, the Illinois Assessment of Readiness that every school takes in the spring. They look at that data and determine the subgroups that are lowest performing and then make goals surrounding those subgroups. As well as the second round of data that they take a look at, and the goal that they center around is it's called the school quality goal. That's one of two things. That's either chronic absenteeism or the 5 essential survey, which again we give annually in the spring. The last goal was a needs assessment that each school team completed and discussed. So you'll see a little bit of variation in those goals on the third one for each one of the schools. Another thing that you might see is the term RC18. That's the schools that were designated as either underperforming or lowest performing in the report card in 2018. So those are the 6. That's why you're seeing 6 plans in front of you today. The next round of every other school will come in February, and it's the same process. So as we discussed in the initial on October 15th meeting, the process for the timeline really has changed. So it's really a winter timeline. In the past, it's been school plans had been finalized in the spring for the following year. That's really changed with this new law, in that this is really your approval kind of jumpstarts the implementation of those plans. Each of the 6 schools, we receive state funding for each of the 6 schools. We are required to partner with a group that's called Approved Illinois Empower Group. Each of the 6 schools work with the DeKalb Regional Office of Education. So Amanda Christensen is here as well, if you have any questions about that partnership, what that looks like. Any questions? Jeff.
Well, for the sake of brevity, to a certain extent, though that's not really necessary, between October and now, are there any changes that you have instituted, or any thoughts or things that you have included in here that we need to be aware of? Anything that's changed since October?
It was really a deep dive into the data. So in October, the previous meeting that we talked about this was really that specific subgroup that was identified. So from there, each school team looked at not only that subgroup, but also every subgroup that was the lowest, and really targeted those as well as school-wide goals. So it was really from October, it was really a school-wide, a school-specific effort to arrive at these plans that you see today.
Thank you.
How was just out of curiosity, how was the improvement plan format selected?
So that's, Amanda, you want to talk? Okay.
That format is dictated.
I love it, by the way.
Hi.
So I'm giving you a chance to brag.
That format is dictated by ISB,
Okay.
and it actually changed from last year to this year. In some ways, the format is much more complex than last year. In other ways, though, it's much more guiding and user-friendly, in that it allows you to more specifically map out what your goals are and how you're going to get there and what are your indicators, which was really lacking in last year's dictated format. So that's where it came from. At some of the schools, worked with Melissa from my office, who had been trained on how to facilitate that process, and some did not. So it wasn't a requirement that you work with us on that, but those who wanted to did, in order to help kind of wade through all of the steps.
Well, I think, this style of tool also allows you to say, we're making a bet that these things are going to make a change, and if they don't, you can go back and edit those, and I think that's a great tool for that. The only other little small comment was, I noticed that some people put the, and I love that they actually have numbers on their performance, which is great. Some people included where it is now, some people didn't. Right. I don't know if you noticed that already, but just something, it would be nice to see the baseline.
Okay. Yeah, are you talking specific to the IER goal, the goal 1?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. That's where most of the.
The
stats
goal
are
three, that would be more difficult for goal three, but right, the first two.
Correct. Yeah, any of them that basically you're saying, we want to achieve X as a number.
Sure.
It'd be nice to know where you were originally. Have that on there as well.
And that's, so some of the schools that you've noticed, as we talked before, they're not designated commendable from the state. So that's a 3-year process, okay? So these guys will be back at the same time next year, regardless of the designation that they'll get in the next school year. Does that make sense? So once you're designated, the state gives you a 3-year kind of window for that school improvement, knowing that they're going to provide assistance and resources through the funding, and they're not going to kind of pull the rug out, so to speak. So you're kind of promised a 3-year window of funding for that, regardless of the next subsequent designations.
And this is just for clarification. From you and I talked, and from what I understand from that talk and from these numbers, that this gives you a clearer tool, or gives you a better tool at this point to make improvements in places where we need improvements. In other words, we've got places that we need improvements. You needed clarification for that. You needed some sort of light to be shined on areas where you need to be shined, and this gives you that tool to do that.
It does, and you'll notice that some of those goals, you'll see goals, strategies, and activities with shorter and longer windows within the same time. So these guys, it'll be a quicker process, a more efficient process next year. This was really, as Amanda stated, kind of from scratch. You know, they started these from scratch. Many of these are 3-year plans in which next year they will review the data of existing goals and see if they need to reset those. So it's really going to be, they put in a ton of work to get to this point right now. That's going to be more and more efficient as the years go on. You're just going to look at your plan and then revise. You know, it's not going to be starting from scratch.
Please give my kudos to the team for that. Good.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo that. Absolutely. Couldn't be clearer. Thanks so much for all the work.
I think what the state was recognizing, and Mr. Brown spoke in public comment in our last meeting and used the analogy of popcorn popping. That, you know, same heat, same oil, same conditions, and you know the popcorn pops at different times and different rates. And I think that's why the state's giving that 3-year window, recognizing that, you know, some schools are, you know, going to accelerate quicker than others, depending on, you know, what the improvement efforts are. So it's, again, great work to town and the building staffs for getting this all pulled together.
A lot of work.
It is. You'll see the next round again in the 2nd February meeting, in which there'll also be information and action. So that's just kind of the nature of this process. I know you're not accustomed to seeing information and action items, but you know the amount of work that you guys alluded to, and we just need to give them as much time as possible. And having these 2 weeks ago would not be possible. That's kind of the process.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, so then we need to, yes. This is an action item that the Board of Education approve the school improvement plans for the following report card 18 schools: Malta Elementary, Little John Elementary, Founders Elementary, Tyler Elementary, Clinton Rosette Middle School, and Huntley Middle School. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Sarah Moses? Yes. Victoria Newport? Yes. Jeremy Olson?
Yes.
David Seymour?
Yes.
Jeff Albrecht?
Great, thanks. Yes.
Samantha McDavid?
Yes. And with that, our meeting is adjourned. We have a motion. All in favor?
All right.
Merry Christmas.